This is DK and Shay from TacoYaki Anime,
Yo!
and we are back for another episode of Monthly Ketchup, episode 67.
Woo!
We'll be talking about our final thoughts on the summer anime of 2020.
Nice. I'm not sure how I really feel about this season. I'm really kind of just. The season's been. I don't know.
I don't know how the rest of the season is going because I was only able to get through a show in like 3 quarters. So
I mean, I think there were 2 other shows, one of which you're going to talk about, that I kind of got partly way through too, and the 3 other shows. I mean, so that's about average for me, honestly, as far as like my in shows go, kind of thing. Yeah. And I felt like it's kind of a disappointing season. I don't know. Maybe it's just this year has just kind of just dragged on or something, but.
It's just like it's been 2 years already.
Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe maybe we just need to get out of this year, go to the new year, and then just start new and just be like, all right, here we go. This is what's gonna happen. Because I think this year has just had too big of an effect on everyone mentally to allow for good things to happen. I guess I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just weird.
Yeah.
So
today we have 4 shows to talk about. I wasn't sure if this is the smallest episode we've had, but I feel like there was a 3. But yeah, that's one of the small in number ones.
Yeah, like I said, I might have been. I didn't feel like I had like 2 other shows I'd watched too, but I hadn't finished them, so I wasn't sure about adding them into it because I didn't feel like as an end thing for it. I'm like, I didn't really watch everything.
Yeah. One show that I watched actually ended, and then the other one is going to be continuing into the fall. So, or at least as far as I can tell. Hopefully, I'm not sure, but yeah. So the first show we're going to be talking about is The Misfit of Demon Academy. Demon King again.
So I had. Let's just put it up to the front. I had 0 expectations for this show. Like, I didn't even have like a, this is what this show is going to be about. Just looking at that picture you have there with the 2 girls. I mean, that's one that I've seen a couple different times and looking at it going, I mean, you look at that and you automatically think,
oh, another
come
harem.
on. You have expectations of that. So you're just like, all right, this is kind of what we're dealing with here. This is the page we're on. The first episode was definitely one that kind of went. It took my what little expectations I had for it and just blew it out the window just because of the fact like we've watched animes like One Punch Man and stuff like that where characters are overpowered and you're just like, oh my god, there's nothing what the hell's gonna happen? I mean, look, nothing can stand up against them, In the very first episode, they almost do that basically within the very first episode, but then like you got to think, well, this is a demon, so what are they gonna do? They're gonna take that little like, oh, he's overpowered, and be like, wow, he's overpowered and kind of evil and sadistic in a way, kind of thing. Which kind of like, oh my god, the fact like in the very first episode, he spars up against somebody and literally kills them and resurrects them about a dozen or so odd times, and you're just like, dude. I mean, even when the other demons that are around you watching it as a spectators are like horrified looks on their faces, you're like, okay, man, come on. You've proven your point. Let it go. But then I felt no remorse for him whatsoever, because then, after everything was said and done, he could have left it alone. But then felt the inclination to go and try to fuck with him later on that day and that very night. It's like, come on. You got your ass solidly handed to you. What did you think was going to happen? I have no remorse for you. You're completely to blame in this. And basically, the rest of the show kind of carries along that same route. I mean, it's like there's no real contest. You always the main character, the Demon King, is always going to pull through. He's always going to come out in the end. Things are always going to work out for him, even if you don't think they are going to work out for him. Even if the equation is stacked so far against him that it would just be absolutely ludicrous for him to be able to pull something off, he still pulls it off. And you're like, all right, you're just one of them characters. You know what? It's almost like, does it take a certain amount of like tension away from things? Sure. There's really no tension, because you're like, well, he's gonna win. I don't know how he's gonna win, but he's gonna win. So in that sense, you could almost get it. It almost goes from being like a fantasy action to like a fantasy slice of life. So you're just along for the ride. You're not even, don't worry about it. Don't sweat it. Even if there is a cliffhanger ending, you're not going to be sitting there, hours afterwards thinking to yourself, well, what happened? You're like, well, he's got it. It's fine. Don't worry about it. We'll catch up with him next week. He'll have it. We're good, But was it bad for what it was? No. I say all this, and you'd think I would think of it as just being an absolute negative, and I don't feel that way about it. I don't think of it as just an, oh my god, this is an amazing show kind of thing. But I feel like what we have here is just... how does someone describe something? It's like, eating a bag of popcorn. You idly do it. You don't really pay much attention to it. You're just like, oh, it's just here. I just, I'll do whatever. Eventually you get to the bottom of it and you're like, oh, I finished a bag of popcorn. Wow. Where did that go? Okay, cool. And you move on. You don't really give it a second thought. You don't really think about it overly much. And again, it's not to say that it's necessarily bad. You enjoyed the popcorn while it was still there. Mm-hmm. But
you're not gonna have discussions about the popcorn afterwards.
No, you're not gonna be like, oh my god, that was the best popcorn I've ever had in my goddamn life. That changed my life. Oh my goodness. I will never think of popcorn in the same way again. No, you're not gonna go there at that. You're just gonna be like, that was a good bag of popcorn. All right, cool. And that's just kind of the way I feel about this anime. It's not bad. It's not amazing. Did it, enrich anime in general? No. Did it exceed my expectations and what it was about? Sure. Because I hear Demon King of Misfit Academy, and the first thing I'm thinking of is like, oh, we're at like a school. I think of that one demon show that me and Spaz had watched, that where the kid got kidnapped and now he's like the grandfather or the grandson of like the Demon King. Yeah. I think about that because he had to go to school and everything like that. Like that's what I consider. You say the misfits of Demon King Academy, like, oh, they're like the underdogs, which they were, of Demon King Academy. So it's you don't necessarily expect the storyline to go where it was going, but when it starts going in the direction that it is going in, you completely understand. Like they don't so much as slap you upside the head with the clues about like what's happening under the surface, but they're not coy about it either. There was a human who had very strong negative feelings about demons in general, back when the Demon King, before his resurrection 2,000 years ago and everything, when he was still alive back then. And he found a way to kind of allow his malice to carry on to the present time frame, essentially. And once you figure that out, you're like, all right, that's where we're at. You're like, all right, so this is the overarching story. This is what we're dealing with, and this is how he's going to solve everything. Cool, let's do it. And they had hinted at the hero's resurrection so many different times because they were like, oh, the Demon King resurrected, but also the hero was supposed to resurrect as well. And you see their first showing of what the hero resurrection was, and you're like, they're not the heroes. They're only saying that. They may think they are, but they're not the heroes. And then you have one person who came to the Demon King, and the only reason why you even consider him potentially not to be the resurrection of the hero is because he's a demon, and two, he ended up, what did I say? He ended up there was another person who was with the Demon King who you thought, oh, this might be the resurrection of him instead.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, you're like, when it is finally revealed, like, oh, he's the resurrected version of the hero. You're like, all right, well, that makes sense. No, it's kind of, you had option A or you had option B. There was really no like in between. You're like, this is what we're dealing with. I mean, so like I said, nothing about this show was necessarily bad. Nothing was amazing. I enjoyed it for what it was and what it offered. But, am I going to be like, season 2 is coming? Woo! And I'll be like, all right, hey, they're making another season of it. I might flip through it every now and then just kind of see what's going on or whatever.
I can eat some popcorn right now.
I can eat some popcorn. It's fine. Like, totally fine. But it's not. Yeah, again, it's one of those like if I had better shows to watch and keep my attention, it would kind of go to the back burner. At this time, I really just didn't have any old better shows that I was really watching. It was just like I kind of was in the mood for popcorn, so we had popcorn. So that's kind of where it went.
Okay.
So
I take it that they didn't end like the story in any kind of. They just like stopped, or
kind of. So like, I mean, everyone more or less now agrees that he is the Demon King. There is no faults in that. They also recognize that the ones that they thought were the resurrection of the hero are not the resurrection of the hero. There are some relationships that kind of started budding, and you're like, well, there's a possibility that they could start doing things here or there, but they just kind of hinted at a lot of it without actually going into it very much. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. Could they end the series where they had ended it at? Sure. There would be no necessarily reason to, because it's like, well, you can just kind of imagine they all just lived happily ever after. In the end, that's what we did. That's how it happened. Or could they continue on and be like, well, this has to get wrapped up. This has to get wrapped up. This has to get wrapped up. Sure. Absolutely. But it's like at this point, we've already tackled the big major issue that was abound. So it's like, does it really matter? No. Well, can we do something with it? Sure, but should we? I mean, it's entirely up to you. If you want to, looking at the studio, being like, if you want to spend the money to go ahead and do a season 2 on it, you go ahead and go for it, buddy. But is it necessary? No.
Okay.
So.
I don't know. These questions are kind of like, I don't know. It's like, would you recommend this show? And you're like, sure.
Yeah, I mean, okay. If I were to recommend this show, this would be the type of show that it's like. If I were to compare it to another anime, I would be like, well, you might as well just watch this anime, or you might as well watch this anime, because it's like, well, it's kind of like a fantasy, kind of like in the same realm as like Goblin Slayer, and I'm like, well, you should just watch Goblin Slayer, and it's like, well, it's kind of in the same as like, um, One Punch Man because it's got like the overpowered character, and I'm like, just watch One Punch Man, it's like are there animes that do this better? Yes. Does that mean it makes this wrong? No. But it means that like there are enemies that do this better. So, if you're in the mood for popcorn, if you like fantasy and whatnot, should you go out and watch this? Sure, go for it. I don't see why there isn't a reason why. I don't think you would necessarily be completely off put by it or be, irritated about watching it. But is this one that I would say like everyone should immediately go out and watch right this second? No.
Okay. So basically, if you don't have anything else better to watch.
Yeah. If you have a fantasy overpowered character itch where you're like, I gotta watch something, boot this up, go for it. But if you were like, I am backlogged on animes and have nothing, I have so many ones I want to catch up on, and you haven't seen animes like One Punch Man or Goblin Slayer or all these other high tier ones, Demon Slayer or whatever, go watch them. You'll be way more happier for it. But again, so I mean, it is what it is. So.
Okay. Who's your favorite character?
I guess the main character, the Demon King, he said such a from the very first episode when he sat there and killed and resurrected the same dude over and over and over again, and instead of like, because he's a demon, he could have acted like in malice to it, could have been laughing maniacally, or could have been like, there were times he would actually pause and was actually talking with this dude, being like, I think, what did he say? He's like, oh, there was this somebody who would did some study on this. Like he was analyzing things and being like, and wondered if when you're resurrected, is this your true form or is this essentially a clone of you having been made from the resurrection of the magic itself? Let's test this. And he'd snap his fingers again and the guy would just blow away. And you're like, dude, damn. Holy crap, man. What the hell? And it's not like he ever considers like his ability to do something, like no matter what's pushed up against him, he always has that calm demeanor. It's like he knows he's a badass. There's no question in his mind. There's no like, oh, I don't know how I'm gonna, however am I going to beat this impossible task put in front of me. He's just like, all right, let's get it done, come on. Yeah. It was like, what is it, at one point during the hero school and the demon school had like a competition against each other, and the hero school cheated by like, I guess the whole process was inside of a lake, and they made the entire lake into holy water essentially.
Oh.
So he finds out about this. He's just a spectator there in the first bout of it, and then he kind of brings it up to him. And they're like, well, what do you want us to do? Drain the lake? And he's like, don't worry about it. I got it. Goes and flies up into the air, makes like a freaking Frieza size ball of energy, pushes it down into the lake, and the lake just goes. All the water's gone. He's like, I took care of it. You're fine. He's like, let's get this going. And I'm like, he has no. It's like could he have more emotion? Absolutely. But the fact that he's almost deadpan when he does stuff like this, or just has like this faintest little smirk because he knows he's badass and he could take care of it, you're just like, dude, come on. What the hell? So if I were to pick one character, yes, it would probably have to be him, because there's just no denying the fact that he is who he is, and he is as powerful as what he is. So,
so far I've heard. Well, I saw the explosion, resurrection, explosion, resurrection. I saw a clip of the castle being thrown,
Yeah.
and then now I'm hearing about evaporating a lake. What was your favorite part?
Um, I mean, it's just like I think because they have so many monumentous things that happen during this whole process, during this whole series, like there's really no way you can necessarily go like, this part was good, this part was good, this part was good, because you're like, yeah, he's through a castle, but also he fought freaking death, and he fought freaking time. Frozen in time, and he just is like, are you done? Is this all you got? Is you want to? All right, cool. Let's keep going then. You know, it's like,
It's
what
just
can
those.
you do? You're just like,
It's like you could get a die with some crazy stuff, like get some like super powerful crazy nouns, and then get some super powerful crazy adjectives, and then put he exploded the sun. Yeah, that sounds like something he could do.
I mean, you're like, all right, sure, dude, whatever you want to do, man. Should we all just be thankful that you're not like malicious to the point of where you're wanting to destroy the world? I mean, what the hell? Because I don't know if there's anybody who could really stand up against you. I mean,
Yeah.
he freaking has, like, they make mention of this on so many occasions. Like, everyone has, like, a core that makes them up. And it's what they use in order to, like, resurrect or to be able to perform magic and all this other stuff. He freaking has his core stabbed through and then comes back. You know, you're like, wait, shouldn't that have killed you? Wait, no, you probably just resurrected yourself again. My bad. Sorry about that. You know? He's like, because the dude, I think one of the dudes he was facing off against was like, they had so stacked the odds against him. He was in a sword fight with another guy. He had this bracelet on that was constantly draining his power. And he gets teleported to another place at the end of the match where no one knows where he was at. He was in like a shadow realm essentially almost. Has like the stuff that the wall that he created from his death 2000 years ago. This dude kind of, I guess, bottled or grabbed a piece of or whatever and was using it as a weapon against him because it was like anti him almost kind of thing. And so he had drained him of magic, was using that against him, had the dude that he had been voicing with's mother like in another like in a viewing glass where they saw her and she was dying. So the dude he was facing went through the glass to her, but then he was trying to hold off the stuff that was attacking him, and stuff started attacking her at the same time. He had weakened his magical power. He was trying to shield them both, and eventually they're like, he ends up getting overwhelmed, and he's like, "Ha, your full power was nothing eventually because you drained so much of it." And then all of a sudden he comes back and does something, and it's like all of a sudden he's just there, and you're like, he's like, "Wait, how did you do that? Your power was all gone." And he's like, "Well, actually, my full power hadn't been released yet, but because you pushed me so far to where I was at and drained what I had originally had from the beginning of my resurrection, the rest of it unlocked." And I was like, all right, cool, dude. All right, that's fine. Cool. All right, there we go. Am I gonna question it? Hell fucking no. This is the situation we're in.
I was just using the cash that was in my wallet. Now I got access to my bank account.
Yeah. I found my debit card. You thought I was using my debit card the entire time. Ha! Essentially, it's what it came down to.
Wow.
You know, you can't even have like touching moments or anything like that because like his mom, the dude's mom, sacrifices herself. She was like a spirit, and he's all distraught because she disappears. But in the beginning of it, the Demon King was trying to help, um, trying to figure out. I guess there's like some sort of like every spirit has a focal point, and if everyone, it's almost like gods, where like the more people know about it, the more people believe about it, the actual more corporal they become, kind of thing. And she just disappears because she used the last of her energy that she had remaining. Dude's all distraught. And the next thing you know, when they go back into the normal, or into the place where in the arena where they were fighting originally, she's there, and he's just like, "Wait, what happened?" And it's like, "Oh, because the Demon King figured out that her focal point was being a sword. He made the sword that he had been using look like the one." Like had made people believe in that sword, which was almost like her sword essentially. So all of a sudden, everyone focus point was on that. So all of a sudden, she came back into existence, and I'm just like, I don't get it, but sure, let's do it. All right, yeah. Was I worried? Not even for a damn second, because I knew you were gonna pull something like this. Here we go. You know, it's like I said, it is what it is. I don't try to make anything more out of what it is. I can't think it. Like I said, it's not the most amazing fantasy anime I've ever seen. It's not the biggest, baddest. You know, it's nothing nowhere close to that. You know, it's just you gotta take it with a grain of salt. So
Good. Uh, yeah, popcorn.
basically,
The next show we're going to be talking about is Monster Girl Doctor.
so this was gonna go one of two ways, or at least I thought.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, we're either gonna go very much into the whole harem aspect of this, which is going to be like total, you know, he's gonna be collecting girls all the time and da 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 da, and he's just, you know, whatever. Or we're gonna pick more into the whole monster aspect of this and actually kind of like put a spin on the things that we normally would think about or consider it being with monsters and stuff like that. So what we got, at least from my perspective on this, is sort of a combination of the two in a way.
Thinking that, yep.
Like a little bit of one and a little bit of the other. Um, the reason why I say this is taking into account the harem aspect of it. Yes, he has monster girls. I mean, obviously, the title of the show is Monster Girl Doctor. He has monster girls around him all the time. His nurse is absolutely infatuated with him. And I would say the centaur and the spider are also absolutely infatuated with him. But
Okay.
the other ones, well, okay, I take that back. And the dragon is also absolutely infatuated with him. But the other ones, well, I don't necessarily know if I say that because at the end, she was calling him Big Brother. So I think it's not necessarily the love of like a girlfriend boyfriend sort of situation going on, but more of like family and caring kind of thing with her. And yeah, so I can't. That one's still a little up in the air. The other ones for sure, I know for a fact because marriage and love was talked about in numerous occasions between them. So obviously can't deny that. The other ones though, even though he had sort of interactions with, and they like him, it's never overly saturated with the whole love sort of situation thing.
Okay.
So the harpy, the mermaid, like all of them like him, but it's not like, oh my god, they want to get with him and have kids with him. Da, 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 da. No, 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 no. They're just like they, at least to my look of it, they just never went that far into it with them. Um, they respect him, they like him because he helped them out in situations in which they needed the help, even if they didn't always ask for the help. He just saw that there was an issue or there was a problem, and he took care of it, which goes into the other aspect of it, which I really enjoyed, which was there were times, not always were these issues where like he would come across like it wasn't like an appointment where he was called all the time. Sometimes it was, don't get me wrong, but not all the time. Sometimes it was just a matter of happenstance where he would come across some person and be like, "You need help," and he would try to help out. Um, like for instance with the mermaid, she wasn't originally part of getting an appointment from him. They came across her as they were going shopping, and she was going to sell them a song, sing a song for them or whatever. And in the midst of it, she started having like a coughing fit, and that's when he knew something was wrong and offered to help. So situations like that. Um, with the harpy, he was called to their village, but not by the harpy who needed the help. It was the other harpies who were like, "She needs help. Can you come and do this?" And they were like, and in order to not make it seem like we're just trying to pick on her, we're just gonna have you do a checkup on everybody, and then you can then go ahead and see if she needs help, kind of thing.
Okay.
You know. So I mean, there was definitely situations, and they had I can't remember, forget about her, but they had a cyclops at one point, and she's a bit of a clumsy goof who doesn't necessarily have any sort of. She's funny in the way that she has no confidence in her own ability.
The depth perception.
Well, she has no confidence in her abilities to do anything, so she's always like thinking that someone is mad at her and whatever she's doing. So she's constantly fumbling around, like trying to apologize for things or being all sorts of like shy or whatever, just because she doesn't, one, even though she's a Cyclops and it's kind of noticeable, like I think she doesn't want people looking at her, kind of like attention thing.
Mm-hmm.
She'd rather not. And then two, it's a matter of like she has no confidence. So every time anyone compliments her, she thinks that she's being made fun of or someone's, it has ulterior motives or stuff like that, sort of situation, which kind of just adds more to the comedic effect of it, honestly. Because even though it's, a lot of times the doctor, he's just like, "Can you calm down, please? Just calm down. It's fine. No, 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 you're fine. You did great. You did great. No, I'm not trying to make fun," and you're like, he's trying to fall over himself just to be like, "Okay, come on, stop it. Stop it. Stop it." But I don't know. It's so as far as the show goes, I enjoyed it for what it was. I did. It definitely was something interesting and entertaining. It did not. It had drama, but only in a minor sense. Not so much. Like, it was almost like, oh, the monster of the week kind of thing. Though some of them kind of took more like maybe 2 or 3 episodes, depending. But it was still fun. It was still a fun little journey, and nice to see the different monsters, nice to see them in a different light than what you normally would expect them in. And just to be able to understand kind of the fact that, if given a situation, if monsters were in the real world, what would what would be the trials and tribulations of what they would have to deal with? At one point they were up in the mountains because they were taking care of the harpies, and his nurse had a problem. Why? Because she's a snake. She's a whatever I can't remember the name of the freaking mythical creature thing that she is, but since she's part snake, she's reptilian, and they were in a mountain area. which means they're higher up in elevation, which means it's colder.
Ah,
So she was having a problem because of how cold it was. It's a simple thing, but it's not necessarily something that you would necessarily think of. And could they have ignored that just because they were dealing with the harpies and that was probably the main focus of it? Sure. But they didn't, and they took it into account, being like, well, no, she's a reptile, and she's in the mountains. It's cold, so she's going to have problems too. So eventually, that's when the spider lady came into to play because she knitted her like. Oh, and the spider lady's a clothes designer. Go figure.
cool.
But yeah, she came and knitted her or get her like sewed her together like this parka dress outfit thing, so that way she could stay warm. So it's like, okay, cool, I can, yeah, totally see that. Everything they did made sense.
Mm.
Is there was like no wasted in being like trying for extra drama. It was a matter of this could happen, so what would be the result and how could they fix this because of that kind of thing. So in that sense, I was totally on board for it because I'm like, oh yeah, no, you're absolutely right. If a mermaid stays above ground or stays above water for a huge period of time, are their lungs going to dry out, or they're going to have like problems breathing underwater? I mean, that would potentially be an issue, I'd imagine. But you never think about that because that's never a thing that normally happens or not something that normally people discuss. So to me, I was like, oh no, that's a cool thought. Yeah, sure. What would happen if that would happen? You know, or the fact that they had a giant who was, after they solved the whole thing with the harpies, they were about to get ready to leave, and all of a sudden, like, an earthquake starts happening, and they're like, "Oh my God, what's happening?" And then freaking harpies are freaking out because they're like, "Oh, it's the giantess! She's come! She'll destroy us all! It's the legendary curse! Da 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 da! We didn't give her a sacrifice! Da 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 da!" And then so they get ready for battle, and even the centaur that was there with him was like, "All right, I'm gonna defend the village. I'll help you guys. You guys evacuate. Da 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 da." And then the giant just gets there, and she came because she heard there was a doctor and she has a cold. But the reason why it took her, and see, now we go into the realism point. The reason why, because it happened over the course of like a few days, but like there was constant just like over and over rumbling and stuff like that. And you find out the reason why is because she's so big that she wanted to make sure when she was coming from up high on the mountain coming down that she didn't squish anybody. So every time she'd take a step, but she would watch to make sure there were no animals or anything in the way before she put her foot down. But then by the time she put her foot down, of course, it would be a little harder than probably what she meant it to because she'd been holding her foot up in the air before she moved it, so it would cause a rumble from the impact. So I was like, no, that makes sense. No, I absolutely could see that. Because it's like if you thinking as a human, if you ever put your foot up in the air and then try to like hold it there for like a couple seconds, and then when you put your foot down, obviously it's going to be down a little harder than what you imagine because you're hanging your foot up there, kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and like the whole is not really this right scale, but like the whole giant thing. Many years ago, I went to a birthday with family, and um, it was laser tag, and everybody else was like, I don't know why they made me go in there, but everybody else was like 8 to 12, and then there's like a couple 30-year-old parents and 30-year-old parents, and then there's me in there. And I had never played laser tag, so I'm like, ooh, well, I was like, I want to play laser tag, but I'm like, is this like, would this be fun for me? There's a bunch of kids in here, and so I'm like, okay, whatever. So I'm like trying to figure out how it works and all that kind of stuff because I've never been in any laser tag, and I'm like, oh, okay. So I got my vest on. I got the little thing. Choo, choo. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Let me go try to find somebody. And I'm like, poof, and I knock a kid over. And I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. And I pick them up. And I'm like, okay, cool. And I turn out the corner. I'm like, boom, knock over another kid. And I'm like, okay, this is starting to be a problem. And I'm like, okay, cool. So I'm like walking slowly. I'm like, boom, knock over another kid. I'm like, they're running into me. I'm not running. They need. This is a problem. So I can see like the giant where it's like, You have to watch every single step because you're gonna crush somebody,
Mm-hmm.
and that kind of like just changes my whole like feeling about giants. Like what was it? Seven Deadly Sins that we're watching. Like, are they that scale of giant or even bigger?
It's that scale of giant. She's probably
Okay.
about that size. Because at one point he's on a scaffolding trying to take her temperature and whatever, and then of course he ends up losing his footing and then falls down into her chest or area or whatever, and then starts slowly sinking in, and it's just like, oh my god. And then he has to get picked out of. She ends up picking him up by like his foot as he comes back out, and just like, here you go, you know. But it wasn't like, they could have done like another trope. Obviously that was kind of a trope, but they could have done another trope of being like, oh, she freaks out or whatever because like he's there in her, but she's just like calm and just like, all right, because you got to think about it. That might be a common thing. She's like, again, something else just fell in there. Here, let me put you out of there, kind of thing. Put you back over where you need to be, So the fact that, yes, did they go to certain tropes and stuff like that? Sure. But did they go all the way in all the tropes that they had? No. They could have made it so much worse if they did, and the opportunity was there for them to do so, but they didn't do it, which I'm very thankful for.
So it's kind of handled tastefully.
Yes.
Okay.
It's like at one point the spider lady is sort of she's more, she's not a physical ailment, she's more a mental ailment. She has like narcoleptic? No, I don't think it's narcoleptic. Basically, a lot of times she ends up like, just because a friend of hers has something that they have something, even if she didn't want it, because a friend of her has it, she wants it. And that goes the same thing with like men and stuff like that. So she's friends with the Naga. Oh, that's what it's, Naga, the snake lady. So she's friends with the Naga. So then she sees her infatuation with the doctor and kind of was like, oh, I want him now or whatever. But the thing is later on, they're all sitting down, the Naga, the centaur, and the spider lady, and they're all having drinks and talking, and both the Naga and the centaur look at each other. I don't remember what was said by the spider lady, but they look at each other, kind of share a look, and then the Naga goes, I'm going to diagnose you. And she's like, wait, what? And she goes, yeah, let me ask you a few questions. And she's like, do you think about the doctor before you go to bed at night? And he goes, yes. And she's like, okay, well, do you feel a tightening in your chest area whenever you think about him? And she goes, yes. And like, everything she's leading up to, and like, and they after the end, they both, the centaur and the Naga, kind of look at each other, start laughing, and they're like, what are you talking about? And she's all just distraught, and she's like, you love the doctor. It's like, it's not so much that she was trying for it, it's just that eventually it just sort of happened, because like she would play tricks on him or tease him or whatever, and he would just be good natured about it, just be like, whatever, or just kind of go with it or whatever. But that wasn't the reaction that she had been wanting. That wasn't the way that she had wanted him to handle it. And because he handled it in a different way, and because she kept being able to do that to him, and he wasn't afraid of her, or shunned her, or just against her or whatever, eventually she just kind of naturally developed feelings for him.
Okay.
So it was like one of those situations where it's like, again, it wasn't fabricated. You kind of saw the direction it was going in. You're like, okay, this is a natural. I see. There again, all these freaking animes out there who do love stories and stuff like that, take note, please. If you want to do some sort of love story or some sort of like where people get together kind of situation going on here, please take note of this. This was a natural progression. This was a very, the flow actually made sense. How it happened made sense. None of this bullshit where all of a sudden it's love at first sight and they're absolutely infatuated with the other person from like the very millisecond their eyes connect to each other. No, stop that shit. Stop it. Tired of that shit. You can have a love story and still have it actually make sense. This did. This actually made perfect sense. I was completely okay with it because of it, you know? And again, was it a harem anime? Yes. But was it as harem anime as it could have gone? Where like every one of the monster girls he came across all of a sudden became deeply infatuated with him? No, absolutely not. You know, the Centaur may have been the worst one as far as like how quickly the emotions developed between the two of them.
Mm-hmm.
But like the Naga, it made sense. They were childhood friends. She met him when he was young, and then they both went to medical school together. So obviously, there's a good chunk of time in between there where that could happen. And with the Spider Lady, yeah, it was a little quick, but at the same time, it made sense with how she is and with how things progressed. You know, and then everyone else, yeah, they like him, and you know, they kind of want to hang around him, and you know, they respect him. So you know, some of them will tease him and other things, but you know, I will say there was one instance where I was kind of like, okay, where are we going with this? Because when they were at the Harpy Village, the Centaur lady, she's a princess essentially, so she has two attendants with her at all times. One of them ended up getting injured, so he was kind of treating her because there was like a rock slide when they because they was through the mountains they were going. There was a rock slide, so she got injured. So he was treating her at the same time while trying to take care of the harpy situation. And then the problem ended up being is that her other attendant, because those two attendants had been together for all their lives essentially, when she was apart from the other one, she was just like she lost focus. Like all of a sudden there was too much input ratio and she couldn't handle it.
Mm-hmm.
So what did he do? Is he what do you do with horses in like places where there's a lot of input sensory going on to where you can't focus or where they can't focus or they might get flighty or they might get just kind of distracted or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
He put blinders on her essentially. His was a little more, poignant because it was actually literally blinding her essentially, but it calmed her down to a point. They went a little further with that because they kind of restrained her too, but the restraint was enough to be like you could almost I guess you maybe could put it towards like it was like a harness for like a horse or whatever. When you think about it, when the horses are getting a little bit, wild horses or whatever kind of thing, you want to kind of calm them down and tame them. But of course, because she's a centaur, they kind of use some. It got a little bit into depth in that one, just a little. And then at one point, I guess because the princess had been, dropping obvious hints that she'd kind of fallen for the doctor and wanted him as a husband or whatever, um, the attendants decided to tease him on their own and say kind of when they were alone all together, kind of corner them between the two and say things like, well, when you get her, we're all together, so you kind of get us too at the same time. And we're just like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And even the doctor's like, don't know what to do in a situation. I mean, he was kind of like freaking out, but then like he manages to kind of extract himself from that situation. And then they're just kind of like laughing because they were teasing the crap out of him. But it was getting a little hot and heavy there for just like a few seconds, and you're just like, all right, sure. But would I put it necessarily past that? No. I mean, it was just more like one of those situations where it kind of came out of nowhere, but I think because it kind of came out of nowhere, it was also more for a comedic effect as well. So I'm like, all right, I can go with that. I'm fine with that. So
would you recommend this show?
yes, I would almost say it was almost in the same. It's a little over in the same realm than what I would recommend this show, like it for the Misfits of Demon King Academy.
Mm.
Like it nears that sort of recommendation, but it's a little bit over that because I think it has some funny moments and it has some interesting moments for people who are used to fantasy and thinking about monsters in a specific way, and then to be able to see them in a completely different light.
Mm.
So I'm okay with that.
Who is your favorite character?
Hmm. Only because I love dragons as much as I do. I would have to say the Dragon Lady.
And what is your favorite part?
Um, Honestly, the end, just like when they kind of wrap things up a little bit. I mean, don't get me wrong. Is there still room for like potential second season? Yes, there is still room for a second season. Um, the biggest part that they wrapped up was is the Dragon Lady had a tumor that was on her heart, essentially, and she was, and this is where like the whole medical thing, and I'm like, all right, you know what? You can't deny that because she was refusing medical treatment. She was under the belief that she had, because of the fact that she originally had come down to the world and kind of took the form that she had only because she felt bad for her and her ancestors having kind of caused terror and havoc amongst the world, and she wanted to actually create a safe haven for humans and monsters. Well, because that the city has actually kind of done that, she kind of felt like her work was done, and she also felt like the fact that she had a tumor that was essentially killing her was okay. That was kind of her just treatment for everything that had happened.
Mm.
So, in the medical terms, she's refusing treatment, which you can't force someone to have treatment. You
Yeah.
know, it's got to be their option. Eventually, the doctor got her to see a different way, and she accepted it. Um, but it was the wrap up between everything that just because like they had everyone there, and it wasn't like it was like oh, they had to have everyone here for the final sequence. Like the reason why everyone was there kind of made sense, and you're like, oh, okay, that's just kind of nice. You get everyone to be there, kind of thing, because at the end, so you go into the harpy in their place in the mountains, and they're actually now treating the giantess like she's a friend. She's
Mm.
someone who's they respect and they're cool with, and the giantess is also happy to have friends and people she can talk with
Mm-hmm.
and everything. So at one point they were like, I guess because the giantess has been helping out with like moving certain rocks around or unplugging certain rivers or whatever, like they were actually able to make a good harvest for the season or whatever. So
Okay.
they're like, "Oh, we have all this food now. Oh, here, you can have it." And the giantess was like, "Oh, yeah, I actually found some food as well, and thought I would share with you guys as well." So like, of course, the harpy brings out like a normal person, just nice big platter of like fruits and veggies and stuff like that. And then the giantess comes out and brings an even like her size freaking platter piled high with like fruits and vegetables and stuff like that. And they're just standing there like, all right. They're like, well, we can't necessarily have all of this go to waste. And then that's when the next thing you see is like they went to the city where the doctor was, and they're like, we have extras. You want extra? And the dragon lady, I guess, she was so happy about everything that happened. Um, the doctor was in a house call, going to a house call, and ends up coming across the dragon lady because her her carriage had broken a wheel, and they're like, "Oh, we got to fix this." Well, the Cyclops that they had, the Cyclops, the girl Cyclops you see, she actually created the needles that were strong enough and of the right, dimensions and everything. No one else could. No one else could figure out an idea how to do it or how to do for it. She actually managed to figure out a way to actually create the needles that would actually be able to use for sutures for a dragon that were strong
Oh.
enough. And then so she comes by as the doctor runs into the dragon, and then she comes by, and she's like, they sees the broken wheel, and she's like, oh, well, actually, our shop is kind of specializes in fixing like carriages and stuff like that. She's like, let me look at it, and she fixes it brand new. But then the dragon lady's like, oh, hey, perfect timing. I was actually going to go by your guys' place anyways, and deliver this to you. But since you're here anyways, and she ends up pulling out from the back of the carriage like these two giant casks of wine that she had as a gift to each of them, the gift to the doctor and a gift to the Cyclops for having done the good work that they had done. She's like, oh, you can share it with all the other Cyclops, and Doctor, well, this is for you. And so, um, yeah, at the end, it was essentially like he gets back to his place because the Naga had stayed home because she wasn't feeling too well, but she felt better later on. And all of a sudden, he gets back, and she's all mad because he took so long. And she's like, don't wander off or do anything. And he took like the entire day. It was already like dusk by the time he got back. But she opens the door because she heard his voice, and all of a sudden he's got all this wine, all this food, and everything. And they're just like, well, I guess there's really no other choice, and they end up going in and like to a nearby like clearing, and essentially creating like this giant party for everyone to come by and just enjoy themselves, drink and eat and all this,
That's cool.
But then of course, you have all because the harpy was there, Giantess wasn't there, but the harpy was there, the Naga was there, the dragon lady was there, and of course, and she's calling him, big brother or whatever, and kind of hanging on them like the way like a little sister kind of would, kind of thing, and just being like, all cutesy and everything. And of course, that's making the centaur, the naga, and the spider all jealous. And so they're like, no, you get back here, you can't do that, and everything. So it could have been more etchy in certain ways, but the fact that like that scene to me felt more wholesome in that regards, to me kind of that's where the tone primarily for the most part of the whole series is kind of was. It could have gone bad, and there were certain parts where, yeah, like with the two centaurs that cornered him in the one place in the Harpy village, kind of went a little bit, wrong on that regards. But at the same time, it's like a lot of what they did, it actually made sense, and it actually made to where it was like you thought about it, and you're like, all right, no, I could totally see that. So.
That's good. Well, I don't know. It's like I like the first episode on this one, so I might check this one out.
Like I said, it's not. Does it have certain little moments here and there? Sure. Because I mean, it is after all. I mean, you can't deny that it is a harem anime. But
Yeah.
is it not? Does it go as far as some of the other harem animes that you and I have seen? No. No. In fact, this is one of those situations where the protagonist, who is the center focus of the harem, really doesn't really want to be the center focus of the harem. I mean, you can almost consider the Doctor to kind of be like Doctor not Doolittle, Doctor like the Robin Williams character from Flubber, the Doctor in there.
Okay.
He's kind of like the absent-minded professor. Like he's so focused on the medicine and
Yeah.
how to and like diagnosing. Like his whole thing is like he really wants to be like, oh, I want to, if there's a problem, it's almost like a puzzle for him that he has to solve.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, I got to figure this out. I got to figure it out. Even when he does things that you're like, doctor, where are you touching? Doctor, pay attention. Doctor, hey, snap out of it, doctor. Because the Naga have to every now and then has to kind of like restrain him and be like, realize what you're doing and where you're touching. And then it's one of those situations where he'll apologize, but he's still, his mind is so focused on still that problem at hand that you're like, come
Uh,
on, dude. You're like, come on, seriously, come on. But I mean, again, I enjoyed it. I thought it was good for what it was. So.
cool. All right. The next show we're talking about is ReZero.
Aha. So this is what we do on this one. I have a little bit into it, but not too much.
So yeah. I am. This show is amazing.
Yeah. You know what though? I gotta say, I'm like, at the same time, I'm like, God damn it! Why can't you give this guy a freaking break?
I
Give this guy
know.
a freaking break. What he had to put up with in the first season, now in the second season, we're like back to square one, and I'm like, oh my God, fucking give him a chance. Let him breathe.
Man, there's so much stuff I want to say, but you're not comment. The things that I like about this show are we know what tools he has. We don't know how the situation is going to play out, but we kind of everything that he does makes sense at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So he'll try one option. He's like, I'm going to talk to this person first, and then I'm going to talk to that person, and then something bad's going to happen, and then he's going to start back over. And you're like, okay, what if you talk to that person first and then talk to this person? And you're like, no, that doesn't work either. You're like, okay, what if you don't talk to either of those two and try something way over there? Cool, we're getting a little bit farther. We avoided the first situation, and it's surprise craziness. And you're like, okay, what if you don't talk to the two people, but get them together and take them with you to the farther part? That doesn't work either? Okay. All right, let's go back to the drawing board.
Well, the worst thing about that is like every time he has to go back to the drawing board, every time he has to restart, he has to kill himself.
Yeah.
And that's horrible.
Yeah.
Because you got to live with that feeling of the fact that you literally killed yourself. Like, the fact that in the very beginning, the very first episode, when all that shit happens with, God, I can't remember her name. Blue-haired maid. Ray?
Rem,
okay.
yes.
So, with all the bad things that happens with Rem, and he goes to her, and she's unconscious, and people can't remember her, and he grabs the broken sword, and I'm like, oh God, dude, oh God, oh. You know what he's gonna do, and you see that little bit of blood come out, and I'm like, oh God. And it's like, it's not the fact that he does these things. The memory of having done these things stays with him. It's not like he gets a complete blank check. Like when the frickin' in the very first season, when the frickin' bowel girl or whatever was killing him over and over again, like he remembered the feeling of getting sliced like that every single time. Like that stays with him. It doesn't go away. So to think that he literally put it up to his neck and killed himself in that way, and I'm like, that's not going away. You're gonna remember that. That's rough. That's hard.
And that's like, you have, like, you're trying to find the best path. And you're like, this leads to a dead end. This leads to a dead end. I tried that. If I tried this, sometimes somebody will be mad at me for some strange reason. And sometimes they're happy with me. I don't know what that is yet, but I've tried this, and that, and there are no other options. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try this that I haven't tried before, and the same results happen without when I tried this. And when this happens, there's nothing that I can do about it. So I'm stuck. And when you get to a part where you're stuck and you're like, nothing has surprise killed me, but there's nothing else that I can do, it's just ended myself. And that is a horrible feeling.
That is harsh on many sort of situations. And you know, you got to figure it's like people can look at this and be like, well, there's really no drama. There's really no catch in regards to this, because no matter what situation he finds himself in, all he's got to do is end it and he'll go back and make it better. But I think one thing that this show does better than anyone else in that regards and what happens and what they do is the fact that they show what sort of price that puts on Subaru.
Yeah, because like you only can do that so much before you just break down.
Oh yeah. Like in the very first season, when like towards the end of that, like he lost it. He completely lost it. And it took Rem to bring him back.
Yeah.
Which is why this whole situation with Rem in the second season is so heartbreaking. Because it's like you realize, he cares for, he is of course in love with, what's her name? Emilia Chan. Emilia Tan, as he says. He is in love with her, but that doesn't mean he doesn't care deeply for Rem.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of just because of the fact that she was there for him in a very bad time and cared enough about him to bring him back. But it took a lot. So that's why it's just like this whole situation, like, never before have I been as emotionally invested, I think, in characters as I have with these.
Yeah.
Like the emotions, like it's super hard. Those out there who watch anime, I'm sure could say this as well. Those out there who create and write stories or create, anime or whatever, could probably say it is super hard to convey in a believable sense emotions to your reader or your watcher that is going to elicit the same emotions that you're wanting that the characters themselves have. It is super difficult to bring that across. But never before, very few, I can say never before, very few, there may be like a handful of times, have I felt like when he hits rock bottom and he is in like the pit of despair, like I felt that with him. Like I'm literally like, this is one of those where it's like, is it, I think before we joked about with like Higurashi where it's like you gotta watch something, lighthearted or whatever afterwards just because you gotta bring yourself up. I think, but most of that's just because of the psychological like horror aspect of it. But if you want to talk about just raw emotion, where it's like you almost want to have something fun to watch afterwards just to bring yourself up, I think ReZero is it to me. Because, oh my god, I'm just like, with how many times you see him fail, how many times you see him die, and how many times he has to kill himself in order to try and try and try again. And so many times you would think there would be quips from like, the stereotypical, oh, I'm just going to keep trying, I'm going to keep doing it, I'm going to keep trying and keep doing it. But the fact that you see him break down and you see him not at one point not want to do it anymore, not want to try anymore, that's realistic. That is so hard-hittingly felt realistic because you're like, I don't know if anyone else does this, but a lot of times I put myself into situations like on books that I read or animes that I watch or video games that I play, and I'm like, would I be able to do the same thing? And so many times you look at characters and you're like, oh my god, how are you able to do that? But the fact that he breaks down and just can't do it anymore, I'm like, dude, I'm with you. I totally believe that. I wouldn't be able to do it myself. Oh my god, how are you? I would have given up 3 or 4 after the third or fourth time. You're like 10 times in. How are you even doing that, man? And everyone's just like, oh, look at him. He just kind of broke down. And I'm like, that's true to life. Anyone would be in that situation would do the same thing.
Yeah.
You're like, I can't do it anymore. I can't put myself in that situation. Even the first time he did it in season 1 with that broken sword, he hesitated. And I felt that. Like, there wasn't like, he didn't just immediately go and kill himself. He put it there and he started drawing blood before he finally went through with it. And the fact that you don't see him go through with it, but you see the effects because then it pushes you back to where he was with Emiliaton again. And the whole thing happens and it still happens. And I'm like, all right. It's like, it's that it's the most hard hitting you can ever have in anything is by alluding to something happening without ever showing it.
Yes.
Because the reader or the watcher will fill in those gaps for you. And their imagination will put it in. And I'm just like, oh God, I'm just thinking about the fact that, in that alternate timeline and an alternate reality or whatever, essentially, his body is just laying there with a freaking sword, had broken sword all the way through the neck. And I'm like, oh God, dude. Oh, geez. Seriously. And is it a quick death? You gotta figure, is it a quick death? I mean, at some point I'd be like, maybe if I had like something like a pill or something that I could take that would just like, you know, poison wise, that would just kill me without me feeling it. I'm like, maybe then I'd be okay with it, but God, he probably felt that
And it's
up
like,
until the point where he died out.
and I'm like, with this show, even if he had like some kind of pill that he could take, I'm like, I bet one time he's gonna like fall down the stairs and like his pills go sliding and he can't get to him. Like that,
Yeah.
like
Oh yeah, there'd be something. But I mean, that would even be like the only thing I would actually be able to consider myself in that regards. To be
yeah,
like, okay, maybe then I would be like, all right, let's restart, let's reset, let me take the pill, let's restart, let's reset. But like you said before, he doesn't always have that option because sometimes he dies by
yeah,
someone else's hand.
yeah.
He puts himself in dangerous situations and sometimes he's just gonna die. And it's just, oh God, it is so rough. So rough.
I'm so paranoid in this show, like because whenever he's like whenever things are going okay and he's his normal like energetic silly self
Mm.
and like he meets this new person and they're like, oh, I'm so and so, I'm a blank, and you're like, oh, I've heard about them, and he's like just talking like normal. I'm like, uh Subaru, hey, um you probably don't want to make them mad. I know you're like also scared and you're like just acting like covering everything up, but I'm here too, and I'd like for you to like calm down a bit. So could you not make this person angry? And then like he just walks away. I'm like, no, I'm gonna forget that this conversation happened because he's gonna be doing stuff over here, and then all of a sudden this person's gonna show back up, and it's gonna be bad. So yeah, those are things that get me, where it's like he'll come back and then somebody's mad at him for no reason at all that I can figure out. I'm like, why are you mad? No, this is not
Yeah,
planned.
there again, you feel for him because you're like, wait. He just had to go through this person being mad at him, dying from this way, dying from this way. Now you're mad at him? Why? Give him a break. Cut him some slack. And then I think the most interesting thing, and you probably, since you've watched more episodes, know more about this, but the fact that, at least from what I've watched so far, he's met at least one of the witches.
Mhm.
And it's the witch, I think, that is actually the one who is resurrecting him and allowing him to do what he's doing, essentially. The very first one he met, I think. But regardless, it's the fact that it's audience expectation of aversion, at least for me, because this entire time, for the very first season, we never met a witch. Don't get me wrong, we never met a witch, but we see what happens with them. Like we saw, and don't get me wrong, like okay, if everyone out there, if you're ever making something, if you're ever creating a story, and you want a good bad guy, freaking go look for, what was his name, Beetlejuice or whatever, from the very first season. Oh my god, I wanted to kill him so badly. Oh my god, I wanted to kill him so badly. I am like, why won't you die? Just die. There is no redemption for you. There is no thing I can ever say. Like, every time someone thought they killed him, or like he killed him and he had to, come back and do it again, like him dying, I was so happy every single time he died, because I'm just like, oh my god, please let this be the last time. But thank God somebody freaking killed him, because it needed to happen. He needed to die. Um, but at the same time, it's like you see, like if he was saying he was a disciple of the witch and everything, but then the very first witch that we meet, it's under, like, my expectations for that were completely blown. You know what I mean? She sat down with tea with him. I mean, obviously it was in his mind or whatever, and whatnot, and it was under very special circumstances that all that happened. And then she's offering to share her wisdom with him, and he's just like, no, I want to get back to Amelia. No, I'm good. Can you send me back? I need to go back. I need to go back right now. And she's all like flabbergasted because he doesn't want to talk with her or deal with it. And I'm like, her reaction to that, I'm like, dude, that's actually kind of all right. I'm not. I thought this was gonna go like sideways from the word go. Like I thought she was just gonna be some cruel, like just. But I'm thinking that this is what leads me to believe there's more to the story than what we've initially been told. There's more to this world and how things are than what we've been led to believe. And if it ends up turning out that the witches in themselves are actually good, or in some sense good, like, oh my god, that is gonna like blow my freaking mind, because at the same time you've just been led to believe this entire time that there are these evil, malicious beings that create like the whale that killed everyone or lost their memories or like erased them from existence, essentially, or the freaking creature that the disciple from the hunger that like ate everyone and then ate the memory of Rem. Like they've given you so many reasons to be like, these things are evil, but then like the witches themselves seem like they're not evil. And I'm like, is it because the fact that like maybe they started that way and the disciples, like, they end up disappearing and the disciples are like carrying on, but the witches are like, no, we don't want that. What are you doing? Stop it. But they're powerless to control it because they're essentially dead, essentially, even though like their spirits are living on, it seems like. I mean, I don't know, like there's a way more to the story, I know, that I'm not getting it. But I know from like the very first, from the word go, when we first met with the first witch, and immediately I knew what she was, and I think Subaru also knew exactly who she was, just because she looks startlingly like Amelia Tan. I mean, the look is there, you can't deny that, but at the same time I'm just like, all right, no, you're not, like, she could have fucked him over and done some horrible things to him, or so many things that could have gone wrong in that first meeting, and yet it didn't at all. And then the very next time you meet her is in his own mind. I mean, maybe again, I don't know if that first meeting wasn't necessarily in his mind or not, or maybe it's in her mind. I don't know. But and then was he a little upset to how things went? Sure. I think given the circumstances and the fact that I was forced to relive some memories in certain way and circumstances, I probably would be too. But the fact that in the end, he was big enough and grown up enough to be able to be like, thank you. You gave me the opportunity, even if it was in my own mind, to apologize to my parents and to right a wrong that I had always thought I had committed. It was a grown up thing.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that you got to remember the fact that Subaru is like a teenager.
Yeah.
I mean,
his average protagonist age, he's like 15, 16.
Yeah, 16, 18 at the most, somewhere around that age range, basically. And I'm like, the fact that and out of all the experiences that he has had, and that also puts a lot of weight onto the fact of how he broke down and everything. You're like, oh my God, he's only that. Even me being twice his age, and I'm like, oh my God, I don't even know if I could have done that. Jeez. Yeah. And then the fact that he did do that, and the fact that he was grown up enough to be able to look at what she had done, and any other protagonist, any other anime, the very first time they realized that it was the witch who had done it, or had put like those thoughts inside of their head, they would have gone off on her, been all upset with her, da 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 da. He started, and then he was like, you know what? Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to do that. And I'm like, holy crap, dude.
I had a feeling that he was gonna do that anyway because of how he like.
But it's expectation subversion.
Yeah.
If you're used to animes, so okay, you're probably looking at that because of the fact that how you saw him react in the very first season. But if you never watched the first season and just watched the second season, mind you, you're probably being completely lost as far as what's going on. But the way he interacted and what he did in that situation, just going based upon all the previous animes that we have ever watched and the tropes that come along with them, that would not have been the reaction I was expecting.
Yeah.
I mean, it wouldn't have.
Because he's such a special protagonist, and because he can like you say, subvert expectations, and especially the way that he treated her, because she's like, I am a witch, and he's like, I need to go. I am looking for somebody.
I am the witch that you keep hearing about. He's like, that's nice. I got to get out of here.
Yeah.
He wasn't being malicious or mean about that. He was just like, cool story. I got to go.
Yeah. So because he did that the first time, and because she shows up and she's like, how'd you like my little situation I set up for you? I was like, because he recovered so well, I was like, oh, he's just gonna say thank you, because I feel like that he kind of put himself together and matured. Yeah. So, and like you said, at first he was about to go off, and I'm like, nah, man, you're better than okay, yeah, thank you.
But see, given the knee-jerk reaction of that, I can see that going. You almost see the thought process.
Yeah.
Because you're so aggravated the fact that you got put up to that. You're like, you did that to me? You caused that to happen to me? I didn't have to go through that if it wasn't for you doing. And then you're like, but it didn't turn out bad. I actually was able to reconcile, at least in my own mind, what I thought I had messed up with sort of and then you're like, all right, you know what? Okay. And see, I was like, that was almost like the thought process. You could kind of see those gears running in his facial expressions and how he started real angrily at first and then just completely went back. And you're like, all right, sure. All right. And I think even that took the witch by surprise too, I think.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah. So
it's like this series, like there's always more behind the scenes that we are never fully aware of. And I just love the fact that that's the case.
yeah. Um, when he was in the vision, and um, I guess towards the end, when he realized that he was in the vision, I started realizing I was like, but he can come back. And I was like, wait a minute, did he die in the first episode? And he get hit by a bus, a truck, or something?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, there's so many different isekais where like
Wait,
the
you
one
mean
guy,
from the very first episode from the first season?
yeah,
They never explained that.
because I'm like, I'm trying to like go back and like figure out like what was the setup for this series. It
They
was
no,
like,
they never explained that. As far as how he got to where he was and where this all started off at, they never explained that. The very first time that we meet Subaru is um
all I can think of is Konosuba,
oh, you know
really.
what? Maybe he did. Maybe he did. I was just let me try to skip through this real fast.
Yeah, all I can
So,
think of is
okay,
Konosuba, where
so
like he thought he was gonna save somebody and he scared himself to death.
oh, no, 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 no. He didn't get hit. So the very first time we see him, he is at a convenience store
Yeah,
and he's rubbing his eyes because he just stepped out. There was bright light and he'd been gaming all day. And yeah. So after rubbing his eyes, he was looking at the light pole from across the street, and all of a sudden everything goes white, and next thing he knows, he's in the other world. So there's no explanation. There's no explanation as far as how he got there. And
so
throughout the entire series, nobody explains that.
yeah, so when he was like basically realizing his situation, where it's like, no, he's actually not probably not gonna be able to see his parents again. Um, I started realizing that too because I was like, how did he get here?
Mm.
And I couldn't remember. And
Mm.
I was like, oh, he's not gonna see them again.
No. Well, you know what? I don't think that's never to me that's never been a thought process that I've necessarily had because we never know from one way to the other. It's like, well, because there are so many isekais where, yeah, some of them actually stay in the world that they're in, or some of them find a way to get back, but you never know for sure how this is going to pan out.
Hmm.
Now, he's kind of making a life for himself in this new world, but who knows? Maybe this will be some of a situation where he ends up going back towards the end. I don't know.
Yeah, and there's very few that like get fleshed out as well as
Mhm.
this one because there's Overlord, there's Konosuba, which is more on the light side, then there's um, a few other ones where like Dungeon
Well,
and
see, like
like
Konosuba, we know that's never going to happen only because he died. He actually
yeah,
died. So
yeah,
there's no way for him to go back. There are so many isekais, I think, now where the reasoning that behind like they kind of I guess shortcut it and because they don't necessarily want to come up with a reasoning behind how someone got there or give them a reason why they're not wanting to go back to their world is because they're like, well, you died, you can't.
yeah,
Like when you put that as like the reasoning from the get-go, I mean, so many of them have spent like what 10 minutes, if 5-10 minutes in the very beginning of an episode, showing that, and they die, and then they're like, oh, now you're resurrected. Have fun. This is where your life is now.
yeah,
You know. But the ones I think like death march to another world.
Mm-hmm.
He fell asleep while at work.
Mm-hmm.
He took a nap underneath his desk because he'd been up he'd been there the entire day, most of the night, trying to get all the bugs worked out of a game that he was working on.
Yeah.
And then took a nap, and next thing he knows, he wakes up and he's in the fantasy world.
Yeah.
You know, situations like that. And the situations like with this, with him, you're like, he was in a convenience store, normal, everything's fine. He walks out, he's complaining about the fact that his eyes hurt only because he'd been playing video games all day and had just, not gone outside. So the fact that he was outside and, he had lights from the inside the convenience store, his eyes were hurting. So he started rubbing his eyes, and then, how we all do, we've all been there. You rub your eyes a little too hard, kind of vision goes a little blurry, or you're not quite seeing and everything. And next thing you know, he's in the other world, and you're like, how the hell did that happen?
Yeah.
No reason, no explanation. But if you have a feeling, eventually something's going to happen. Something's going to be said.
Do you think
Did the witch summon him?
that they're gonna have a small little arc where the similar thing will happen and it'll flip him back to where he used to be?
It's possible.
Because I would loot all these people, all these crazy situations, and then poof, he's like not there anymore.
You know what would be even better? Is if it was him and Emiliaton who went there.
Oh.
So both of them just poof, gone.
Yeah, like they go do a trial or something like that, and then they just don't come back out.
Or at least for an extended period of time.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's a lot going beneath the surface. And, again, I feel, and the fact that, I guess his previous experiences have kind of girded him to be able to handle situations better in the second season than he probably would have if the first season never happened in regards to that. Because we see what the trials have their effect on Emiliaton and what she's having to go through, and the fact that she's, screaming and basically scared out of her wits because of what she's seeing shown and what going through. But Subaru is able to manage it, and I think honestly the only reason why he probably is because he's had the experiences before.
Yeah, with that situation, I wonder, like, I think that she's out, like, I think what she's going through is some huge crazy event which caused the reason why everybody thinks that she's the witch.
Possibly.
And
it's not something that it's not something that she's comfortable with or is able to,
like, she doesn't have proof that she's not.
Yeah. I think honestly this is going to be a situation where she's going to have to confide in Subaru. She's going to have to confide. She's going to have to be like, look, this is what happened. This is where I'm at. This is why. This is what my issue is. And they do a really good job in being to the fact of it's never the hero who ends up being like, I am invincible, I can take care of everything, I will figure all this out. No, you realize, especially coming from the first season, that he only is able to manage to do what he does, one, with the knowledge that he has, but two, with the help from others.
Yes.
Because even having the knowledge that he has, he can't perform and do the things that need to be done without the help from others. And like the very first season, especially that last half of the first season, was so indicative of showing people that And I think, to me, that's what endears me to this series, and what really makes it stand out is that, so many of those forms of media, when they're talking about heroes and stories like that, they talk about how the fact that it's never the one person who is the solution to the matter, that it's always a team effort, that it always has to come from, everyone pulling together and doing what it is that they can do. But this is definitely one of those shows that really shows that really lets people know Subaru may be the main focal point, but without the people that he has with him, he would never be able to accomplish the things that he's done so far.
Yeah, and I do like how the way that everybody helps is assembled, because in like movies and stuff like that, and in some like maybe superhero shows where it's like everybody helps, it's like, okay, everybody shoots their power all at the same time and that becomes stronger than the enemy and they win. This is more like a certain person was at a certain place at the right time. This person happened to know something that the other person didn't, and it's like a way more complex. Like even the
Well, it's
smallest
like,
thing that you don't even think would be important was one of the main keys to get things done.
well, and it's like, what, the night dude that he was with from the very beginning, who he ends up kind of being in conflict for because he feels inferior to, well, he ends up making a friendship with in the end. But like, even though he's as powerful as he is, had it not been for the help of Subaru teaming up with him in a certain way, I don't even think he would have been able to handle the situation as it came to be.
Yeah,
you know and then, you figure the fact that, what, he had to have those two, the twin wolf creatures or whatever, that were sorcerers or mages or whatever, with him in order to defend him against this attack that came through. But it's because they had that power and that ability, they were able to do that. But had they not been there and a part of it, he would have died in the situation he was in.
yeah,
you know so it's like, it's the right person, the right ability at the right time.
yeah,
Because it could, even if the right or the right, even if the another person had been there at the right time, without their being specialty in what it is that they do, they still wouldn't have been able to handle the situation as well as they did.
yeah.
So, like, you got to look at all the people he's met, and all the people he's become friends with, and all the relationships that he has, put together, and be like, man, you have, in your own sense, the fact, you could think of the fact of him being the focal point is the fact that he brings everything together.
Yeah,
None of these people would have been a part of any of this to begin with, but he's the one who brought them together.
yeah,
So that, to me, just, it, you know, you almost gotta think of this as, even though the fact of, like, he's restarting and redoing things as he goes, I can almost see this as a sense of time travel.
yes,
And the fact that they do this so well, and the fact of time travel, because it's the, like you said, it's the littlest little things, it's the littlest little details, the littlest little communication between people. I mean, what happened when he went to the mansion at first? Because they didn't know who he was or what he was or what he did, they considered him an enemy. So when he left, they killed him, or they killed him inside the mansion. The two maids, or
yeah,
Rem did. But when he made that relationship with her and proved to her that he was a good guy and was not a threat, that never was an issue.
yeah,
you know so it's just like, it's the small little details that no one ever really looks at too hard, but it's so important to think about. you know the whole thing with the whale, he knew, because of the fact that he had died one time when the whale had attacked, but he had managed at the last minute to look at his phone and see what time it was that the whale was there, that he was able to go back and go, I know exactly when and where the whale will be.
Yes.
And you're like, man, I'm not sure I would have remembered the exact time that occurred. Holy crap. You know? Dude, hats off to you. The fact that you like paid attention to that small, minute detail.
I also like how this show won't let you get comfortable.
No. Yeah, no.
Because
Not
it's like,
even a little.
it's like, oh yeah, go ahead, Super. Go ahead and solve 3 problems. Then we're gonna lock it down, and you can't get out of what just happened. And it's like somebody died, and you're like, you can't save them for about 7 episodes. Have fun, and it just stuck.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's just
Yeah.
because just like what people said about like with Endgame and everything when they were talking about the time travel that they did, they're like, well, that's just like an end all be all reasoning. Like it's the perfect solution to every problem. Like you can never have a problem. Why? Because you could just go back in time and fix it.
Yeah.
But the very first time in season 2 that he kills himself to try to go back and fix the fact that Rem was unconscious and no one remembered her, he couldn't do it.
Yeah.
He killed himself, went back, but he can't go back far enough to fix the problem. And that's just crazy. You're like, the very first time that everyone's thinking, oh, he has the perfect solution to every problem, you're like, nope.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't wait to see like more of the show. And it's not like the rest of the show because I'm like, this show's not ending anytime soon. There is wait, man. I've seen 3 more episodes than you, and I'm like, oh my god, there's so much stuff I want to talk about. It's so like
Every time freaking Subaru goes off on his own, or every time like someone says something in a very specific way, and I'm just sitting there going, "Oh God, he's gonna die! He's gonna die! He's gonna die! He's gonna die!" There's just a constant feeling of dread that just
yeah,
washes over you every time, because you're
yeah.
like, even in the fun moments, even in the giddy moments, you're just like, oh God, what's gonna happen? He's gonna die. He's gonna die. He's gonna die in some horrible fashion. Oh geez, here it comes. It's gonna happen. You're like every door he opens or every person he talks with, you're just like, oh, is this person gonna kill him? But is there gonna be someone behind the door who's gonna do it? You know?
I like how every now and then he opens the door and Betty's in there, and you're like, this is gonna be fun.
Oh, the librarian.
Yes.
I like the fact that see, and there you go. That's good. They realize how dark and deep they can go. But they're like, you know what? We can't just keep it here. We got to add a little levity in there. So that's one of the characters. And occasionally she kind of does her own deep and dark way too. But that's at least one of the characters that 9 times out of 10, there's going to be something fun happening here. There's going to be a little levity. There's going to be some jokes. The banter, like the banter between those two is great.
Yeah.
Just the absolute banter that happens between the two.
Yeah.
And then the fact that he was teaching the girl about being in the house, and he's like, just be careful when you open doors. Sometimes there's a person behind the door who's not going to be happy about the fact that you opened the door to their room.
Yeah.
And everyone in the know is like, I know who that is. Ha!
Yeah.
So,
That's so
anyways, yes, good show, highly recommended. Anyone out there who's watching this, go watch this. It's just, but go watch it from the first season and then
yes. Oh yes.
Because
you won't want to stop.
No, wrong.
Well, maybe.
It is a show that is going to grab a hold of you and just will not let go. Even years and years after the first season aired and then the second season was announced, I think neither one of us were like, wait, what's this show again? Like, no. The minute we saw it, we're like, oh, second season's coming. You know, it stays with you. A show like this.
Yeah. The next show and the last show we're going to be talking about is Sword Art Online Galaxy Wars.
Hey. What I was going to talk about, I think you want to talk about too, aren't you? From that opening. I talked about this briefly with Spaz too.
Yeah.
Lost complete interest in this. From that ending part, he lost complete interest in this show. That is how bad that whole situation stung.
What are some shows like Seven Deadly Sins did this, where the last tiny bit of the episode was like, this is what's coming, and then a while later they start actually making this show and they're like, why did we do it that way? I don't like that anymore. We can't stretch that out into like a season. Let's change it. And they changed it. So I feel like they were playing up on the whole Kirito is Jesus kind of thing.
I said the very same thing. The very same thing on the freaking last couple episodes to Spaz. I'm like, Kirito's Jesus. He's the Asian Jesus. That's where we're at right now. He is a mixture of Jesus and Goku at the same time.
Yes.
He's Jesus and Goku. Lend me your powers, everyone! Spirit bomb! Except it's with a sword!
Yeah.
Oh wait, no. Okay, added to that, Kirito is Asian Jesus, Goku, and Neo.
Yeah.
Because the very last part where he like warp speeds to the freaking exit, and all of a sudden he's there, and I'm just like,
I was like, wait, you can fly now? No.
I'm just like, come on, man. Are we serious here? Are we for real? Like, okay, I knew with the whole thing with Kirito being like comatose like almost the entire series. Like, you knew when he came back it was going to be something epic. Which his fight admittedly with that one dude when he first woke up, that was epic. Totally believable, totally epic. Like, we've seen Kirito do shit like that before, so we were like, all right, cool. Here, this is where we're at. This is what's happening. Cool. It wasn't until his fight with the very last guy that we're just sitting here going, oh god, what did we do? Did y'all just have you guys who've made this looked at this after you made it and published it and just are you realizing what you've done here? Are you serious? Because why have we done this? We've made the final guy the devil, literally. He's the devil. And so since you've made him the devil, you obviously made Kirito Jesus. This is where we're at. And then when everyone was like, oh, we have to send our feelings to him, and I'm like, Goku, here we are. Here's Goku. This is what's happening now. We're doing planet-wide spirit bomb. Here it comes. You know? Oh, God. I will say, expectation subversion was the fact that he and Asuna didn't leave. That was expectation subversion.
Yeah.
I thought with her, especially her and Alice right there, I thought, okay, she's gone. She left.
Yeah.
And then Kirito's there, and I'm like, all right, you're gonna wrap this up. You're gonna get him. You're gonna kill him, and you're gonna like just there, and you're gonna, dial in and be done. You're gone. You're out of here.
Because you're done sacrificing yourself.
Yeah, you're done. You've done it. You've awoken. You're all powerful, almighty. Everything's good, and you're gonna take care of business. Got it. Cool. And then the fact that he gets there and he's just like, they're gone, and the clock's already hit 0. He's like, and then he's just like sits down on his knees there, and I'm like, you know what? Honestly, given the situation, honestly, that might be what I would do too. Just be like, all right, well, I can't do anything else.
I was like, run to the console and try.
Well, I mean, granted, but at the same time, I might have gone up to there.
He's like, I got Yui. I'm gonna bring you into the real world. And I'm like, do something.
Well, I mean, granted, but at the same time, it's like you at least have to have that first initial aspect of just like, well, I'm stuck now. There's nothing else I can do. I'm stuck. Eventually I might have gotten up and been like, I guess I'll try, but my expectations for it working are like slim to none at this point, But the fact that then at the very end, there comes Asuna, and I'm like, oh, she didn't leave. Yeah. She knew what this was. She knew what he was doing. Even though he didn't convey that to her, she knew something felt off.
Yeah.
And stayed.
She's like, I've known Kirito long enough.
And I'm like, you know what? Honestly, that's a good like correlation between the fact that she would know him well enough to be like, if he's not here when we leave, something's up, and I need to wait for him. And then the fact that they spent, what was it, 100? 200 years. I mean, it wasn't actually 200 years, but you got to think. I was like, man, what sort of strain would that put on the brain? 200 years worth of life that you've lived when you really even haven't lived that life.
Yeah, that's like a really
life.
It's like a really interesting concept of like, they're taking like a lot of concepts that people discuss now about like artificial intelligence, transferring your consciousness into another thing.
I'm totally cool. Yeah. Like that aspect of it, I am totally cool with. And honestly, from the way that they ended the last couple episodes before the very end, I thought that was the direction we were going in.
Yeah.
Like the fact that he said he was going to, go to school and train and, go deeper into this whole artificial intelligence thing, especially with Alice and probably with, oh God, you just said her name, the little fairy girl that he has.
Oh, Yui.
Yui. Yeah. The fact that he has Yui and he's done things like, implemented to the fact that she's like online, I guess, essentially, and can contact people over the phone and do crazy stuff. I'm like, dude, you have progressed things far more than I think what most people give you credit for in a lot of ways. Like you've taken things and you've gone places with them. Like the fact that he had that conversation with his parents, and I'm like, do they realize what you've done? Like you seem like you're apologetic, but you shouldn't be apologetic at all. You should be like happy. They should be happy for you. Yeah, you are quote unquote a hero in that sense, in that regards. But even taking that out of the whole view of this, what you have helped to create with Yui, and the fact that they literally have a literal artificial intelligence woman sitting down at the freaking dinner table with them, I think should make them go, you know what? We're proud of you. Hell yeah, And I guess they kind of did in that sense afterwards. I guess it was just kind of their sense of just kind of razzing him a little bit or whatever.
Yeah.
But, I'm just like, give him some credit. Like, let him take away the whole Jesus aspect of him when he's in game or whatever. if the next series coming out for Sword Art was primarily put into the real world, where it was him developing, like if they did a time skip and he's now like in his 20s or something like that, and
They
this,
are like he's taking the spot of the guy that was running the consoles and stuff like that.
mm-hmm. Like I said, if they did a time skip and he's now like he's in charge of all of it now. Like he has like mastery control, and he's trying to bring AIs into the real world and make that a thing. Like if that's where they wanted to go with it, I'd be on board because that seems to me like the natural progression of how this was going to all pan out. Like we've gone from just being a simple video game people got stuck into to now we're at artificial intelligence. And like not even like bad artificial intelligence. This is like, believable, like this could happen kind of shit. Where like you're almost like on the verge of just being like, holy crap, yeah, no, totally. I'm on board for this kind of thing. And but then to end it the way they did. Like I was on board with you, freaking who's the one who does this one? I can't even remember. Who's the one who does this series?
A1?
Is it A1?
Yeah, yeah, A1.
A1. A1. I was on board with this whole thing. Like even when you went Gun Gale online, I was still on board with it because I'm like, all right, you know what? It's believable because it's still we're not going futuristic. We kind of almost went steampunkish, but like most of the guns, most of them, obviously lightsabers, nothing this included, but most of the weapons and most of the guns and most of the things are actual real to life. And I'm like, you know what? I could see, given the seed of possibility that they were given, that someone goes, I want to create a game where it's like a battle royale, but it's like guns and stuff like that. I could totally see that. I'm on board for that. Gun Gale, totally on board for. Um, and then when they went to this whole thing with the underworld, I'm like, where they're like, we're developing AIs to be more than just robots, to be more than just machinery. This is literally we're almost developing a soul essentially. And I'm
Yeah.
like,
And
dude,
basically, in order for this artificial intelligence to actually have the sensory input of a human and to have the feelings and everything of a human, we have to create an experience that's so close to real that any being that comes out of it and comes into our world, it's just like they've been living here all along.
yeah. And I'm like, the way that they explained that, I'm like, dude, I am hell yeah, totally on board for that. And then we put in the conflict of the fact that like, oh, there are people who want to get this sort of technology and use it for wars and other nefarious purposes and stuff like that. And I'm like, you know what? As much as I hate to admit it, yes, that's totally true to life. There are going to be people who are like that. Who that's the whole reason. Like we ourselves created dynamite not as a way of killing people, but as a way of clearing out mountains when the railroads were happening. That's what dynamite's first. That's what the invention was first made for. But did it stay that way? No. We then evolved that into weaponry and such. So the fact that you have people who are wanting to take this artificial intelligence and make it into something like that, put them into like machines of war and stuff like that, I could totally believe that. And that fact that you're having to fight for that to not happen, again, totally believe that. So this whole progression that we had here from A to B to C, I'm like, no, absolutely. And then when you show the fact that the main bad guy that you're putting into this, he's not even wanting to give the freaking AI over to his contact or whatever that are trying to do this. He's wanting to keep it for himself in order to, because his nefariousness is even deeper than freaking everything else. And I'm like, oh damn! Like when they showed his backstory, I'm like, oh, he's a bad guy.
Yeah.
Damn, he's a bad guy. Like, I know, like, and when we were talking about with ReZero or like the Betelgeuse dude, I was like, I wanted to kill him or whatever, and I'm like, I don't even want to touch him with a 10-foot fucking pole. He is that like dripping with just evil malice and like nuke him from a fucking distance. I don't even care.
Yeah.
His mind is so deranged and just broken. Like, I don't that those are the types of things where I'm like, I don't even think you could fix that. Like, he's just lost his shit,
Yeah.
you know? But like even that I'm on board with. Cuz are there sick people out there in the real world? Hell yeah, there's sick people out there like that in the real world. It's why we have the laws that we do, is because there are sick people like that out in the fucking real world. But then to just go off and ignore most of that, like you even had when they went back into the real world, and I'm like, okay, he wakes up, he immediately tells them, wipe my memory. I don't even want to remember like any of this crap that happened. But then like the one dude took a copy of his memories and made it into a flux light. So that way it was still something that was in the world essentially. And I'm like,
Yeah, because he's like, basically,
like
this is a consciousness of the longest human being,
yeah.
longest lived human being. So
And
I'm like, okay,
you know what? Yeah, even then I'm like, all right, you know what? You're a scientist. You're someone who revels in knowledge, and regardless of obviously because you were creating artificial intelligence under the radar, under the books or whatever, I could see where you would not tell anyone and just create a copy of his memories because of the fact that he's the longest living essential person in the world or whatever. Like I could see where that would be like, okay, granted, sure, whatever. Um, and you also get the feeling that there's going to be some nefariousness happening between that, considering the conversation that Kirito's Flux Light and that dude had towards the end there. Like something a little more nefarious behind the scenes may end up happening. Maybe he's going to be like the catalyst for like the AI revolution or something like that. Of thinking like AIs aren't going to be, your slaves or anything like that. Even though it's not like that's being like Kirito fought for that not to happen, essentially. So it's like I don't necessarily, if they try to go down that route, I don't necessarily know what they would base that off of, I guess, in a sense. Unless we do a time skip and they say things like, well, over the time frame, AIs were introduced into the world, but it was introduced and people kind of started making it to where they were more like slaves kind of thing. Then
yeah,
I might see where that might come in handy. Like maybe the Flux Light of Kirito is going to kind of hold back and just watch how things progress. And if the rights of the AI aren't going to be taken into account, then he might kind of step in and be like, all right, no, we need to fix this kind of thing. But then again, I can't see why the real Kirito would allow something like that to happen either, though. Like it's not like their alignment on that is any different. There's a reason why Kirito's flux light is like that. It's because Kirito himself is like that. There wouldn't
yeah,
be a reason why Kirito would let some people come through and make AIs into slaves. Like that wouldn't happen.
yeah. My thing is, um, because it's called AI.
Mm-hmm.
Even like the reporters and all the people that were at that press conference, they it's like we're like today in real life we're using AI/machine learning to handle stuff that are simple tasks that make like it's kind of like a waste of time for somebody to do the simple tasks over and over and over. So we're building like machine intelligence to handle that for us, and then we can move on to the next thing. I would say for like driving, like self-driving cars and stuff like that, we're using machines to try to learn how to drive, because driving is a super complex thing, and you can't write like a simple program to be like, you go here and you turn left, you go over there and you turn right. We need something to be adaptable, to learn from what it sees and to become better than us at driving. I think that everybody in that press conference had that mindset where they're like, oh, a better AI, cool, it could drive for us, rather than what it actually is a soul, a person, a being. And I don't really know, like, there's this huge clash. Like, for me, I'm like, they just basically made aliens, and the aliens are gonna like coexist with us. And on the other side, they're like, oh, you made this program that I can put in my machine and it'll work better. And like, there's this huge, gigantic chasm in between those, like, what both things are. And I'm like, I don't see, like, this is apples and oranges. So I'm like, they didn't really like talk about the differences in the show and all that kind of stuff. I just feel like they showed two completely different sides of what.
And if that ends up being like what season, the next season is going to be all about, like if that ends up being how they portray this, and like it's going to be like the introduction of like the flux lights into the real world, and how that is perceived and how humanity takes that and what happens with that, I'm down for that. Yeah. Like if that's the case, if we never or hardly ever go back into the video game world and whatnot, and we just stay in the real world with this happening, I'd be okay with that. Because I think now they have built things up to a point where that is where my interest lies. That is where I'm like, you have a story here. I want to see how this is going to pan out. I want to see where this is going to take us. But the fact that they ended where they did...
Yeah. They're like, okay, that's enough smart stuff. Let's do some fun stuff.
Yeah. They're like, all right, now we're in the future, and people are piloting dragon spaceships and defeating nebula-sized monsters in outer space and whatnot. And I'm like, wait, what happened? Where did we go? What happened with this?
I also have a question, because it's like, from when the acceleration hit and they weren't able to get Kirito and Asuna out until they were actually able to get them out, 200 years have passed or whatever. Then by the time they went back into the world, they said something again about 200 years. So I'm like,
no. What happened is that the acceleration had occurred.
Yeah.
And that was because that was something that had been set up by the bad guys or whatever, where it was like they'd break it essentially.
Yeah.
If they couldn't take it, they'd break it.
Yeah.
So they were going to accelerate things, and they could decelerate things, but it was going to take time, which they did. But see, that's the thing. They decelerated it because they couldn't get Kirito and Asuna out of there until they decelerated it.
Okay.
So they did decelerate it. Now,
so
my question is, they went back to a 1-to-1.
Okay.
That's why this whole thing about when they went in there, and the whole thing about, because, okay, here's my theory about this, but like when they went back in there, they were expecting to go back in there like they normally were, like it was when they left, which would have been during that time frame and all everything, which is why they were a little shocked when they ended up appearing where they did and saw what they saw. That wasn't supposed to happen.
Yeah.
My thought is, and this is just pure theory on my part, I haven't looked into it or done anything else with it, but my thought is we had the introduction of Kirito's flux light and the other dude that was helping him in the real world. My thought is during the interim of them being gone, I don't know the reasoning why, but I feel like they accelerated it again. So in between the time frame when they had left and when they got back, they accelerated it again without anyone knowing. and because it got accelerated, that was the reason why when they appeared, I want to say they were supposed to appear on the planet, on the world.
Yeah.
But you notice they appeared in outer space.
Yeah.
I think it's because where they thought they were going to appear and where they did appear, the world had already shifted and moved so much over the however many hundreds of years that ended up occurring. They could have accelerated even further. Maybe they're like not even 200 years. Maybe this is like 5, 6, 700, 1,000 years into the future, since they're flying around on like dragon spaceships or whatever. Anyways, so my thought is that something happened with Kirito's Flux Light, and maybe they're like, we want to make sure that the AI, if they do anything with it, is going to be so far more advanced that you're not going to be able to do anything to them.
Okay.
I mean, that's just purely my speculation on that regards. But the fact that it did seem like it had been accelerated beyond what the initial thought process had been from where they were supposed to be, seems to me like somebody did mess with it.
Okay.
Now, if that's the reasoning behind that and they explain that from the get-go, I might be a little more inclined to see what they do with it from there on, because it almost seems to me like at that point they're going to show like it's going to be more focused on the AI in that regards, because if that was the reasoning behind why Kirito's Flux Light pushed the time forward so much. I'm like, okay, so he's preparing them in case someone does try to do something, and they're going to be so far advanced, the AI that comes out of that, they're not even gonna worry or do anything with whatever they're happening. It's they're gonna be able to control themselves. Da 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 da. Things is gonna happen. Da 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 da. So like I can almost see that it being in a situation, but I don't know. They're really gonna have to make that explanation pretty quick, I think, once the next season airs. Because the fact that they went for a complete 180 on the whole thing, and now we're like in the future, quasi future of spaceships and giant nebula monsters, just completely threw me off, and now just makes me disinterested.
Yeah, like there was so much stuff that did not like line up. And it's like, one, the two girls, like they recognized them all of a sudden, and I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah, they're the two girls from the freaking academy.
Yeah, because I was like, wait a minute, because with me being confused about the 200 thing, I was like, wait, shouldn't they have died by now? It's been another 200 years. But what they were doing is they were prefacing it's been 200 years from when Alice had been in there. Mm-hmm. And what ended up happening is it's way farther than all three of them have been.
Yeah.
So that clears up my whole confusion with like why everything's so different. But then it doesn't make sense because those two girls are there. So I'm like, there's the one thing about the cryo freeze where it's like,
yeah, now I'm wondering about like freaking now I'm wondering about, say, the girl, her sister that was supposed to be asleep next to the tree. Like, what are they now going to come back, and now she's going to be in like a cryo chamber or something like that?
Yeah, just like still leaned up with frozen, or like floating in. Just.
I mean, like, I guess if that's what you want to do about it, but I still. I think it's just because everything came so far out of left field when we were plodding along with a pretty obvious, like, this is where we're going to kind of thing, and now this is where we're at. It just like, I get not wanting to, expectation subversion. I always enjoy that. Don't get me wrong, but this introduction into this was so from left field. I don't get it. I don't like it. I don't want anything to do with it. I'd rather go back to the story. This is what I feel like we're having. What was it? Shoot. There was another anime that like Was it Dungeons? Like, we had a good story set up, and then the very next season that comes out, we go off the chain. We go completely off the rails. We're now on something completely different.
Oh,
And then,
yeah.
and
Well,
then they're like, oh, it was almost like an sorry from them. They're like, oh, sorry, you guys wanted to know more about this, right?
yeah, it was
All right,
Dungeon.
we'll go back to this now. And I'm like, you had a good setup. You're talking about artificial intelligence, and people are liking it. We're wanting to know more about it. We're wanting to see where you're going with it. Now you do this?
Yeah.
I'm like, come on.
Yeah, I feel like that reveal
Mm-hmm.
should have been some of the seeds that they had planted like earlier in the season finally coming to fruition. Where it's like they get there, the world has moved, and then all of a sudden you see something and you're like, that's what that was? You're like, oh man. And then you're ready to like continue.
Yeah.
Instead of
Instead of
look
sucker
at all
punch.
this crazy stuff.
Yeah. Instead of sucker punching you out of the freaking left field and just being like, surprise!
Yeah. So, would Sword Art Online be Sword Art Online if they spent more time in the real world? Because I feel like they're adding it more and more as the series goes on.
I feel like it is. Sword Art Online has always been about, even from the very beginning, I feel like has always been about the ability to interact in a 3D world environment to bring that which is not real into reality, so that way you're experiencing something on a whole different level, and to make it to where the stakes that you would normally think were so low that you're no longer, it shouldn't be a worry, are now have real world consequences. And I think we're still going along that same path, because each of these artificial intelligence, even in the real world, I mean, we're instead of going from the real world into the artificial world, now we're going from the artificial world into the real world. Now essentially it's almost like reverse Sword Art Online, where it's like we're seeing the perspective of the AI as it would be in the real world.
That's a very
Whereas
interesting.
before we were seeing this perspective of the real world going into the artificial world.
Yeah.
And I think if that's where we're going with this, I'm okay with this. They have set Kirito up to a point in the real world where once he started learning about this, once Yui became a thing in his life, he just delved headlong into this whole like artificial intelligence and all these little being more quasi-futuristic, and what he has, the gear he has, the gadgets he has, stuff that he uses. Like I believe that if in the next, if they jumped, they don't even need to do like maybe what 5-year jump maybe. I think in order to give him enough schooling and enough time learning about the things that he needs to learn about, in order for me to believe that he is basically an expert in that field.
Yeah, I would say, like you said, 5 years. One, get out of high school, get into college, and be about to graduate, and he already has a job.
Yeah. And in fact, not only does he have a job, but like I said, he's an expert in his field. Like people come to him for, oh hey, this is what we're trying to do. Can you, what is it that we can manipulate, or he'd have the answers for it because he's experienced it. Not only he's experienced it, he knows it. He's just so in depth into it. Like I could see that because they've already laid the groundwork for him in that.
What is everybody else doing?
As far as his group goes?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the only time you ever saw them in this one was at the end. Like during the battle sequences. That was it.
So I'm like, they all would beat from time to time in the game. And I feel like everybody would have their like slightly small bit of progress.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, Kirito seems like the only one that would get into that, like into the artificial intelligence field.
I think Asuna might join him in that regards, though.
Yeah, I'm like,
Only because I think she's just too far in depth with him in order to not be at least some part of that as well.
yeah, I'm like, what about his because like the main people like Sinon, his sister. I think those are like the core people. Like you still have like Klein and stuff like that, but they're really like super side characters.
I still feel like Klein's part of the main group. I feel like the ones that are part of the main group are Kirito, Asuna, his sister, Shion, Klein. I'm verging on saying that they're part of the main group with the tamer.
The tamer and
the
the weapons
tamer
maker.
and the weapons maker. Like those two, I'm verging on because I still see them a little more than I see the rest of them. I think.
Yeah, but I would say as far as like development of character, like I feel Klein and maybe the bartender get like full like more development than the rest of the group.
In previous series, I'd say Klein did. In this newest one, he really didn't.
Okay.
All in all, though, I feel like Klein has definitely been one of those he's been so much of a main focus, or at least somewhat of a focus, throughout the entire series. I mean,
he's literally day one.
Yeah, he's literally the first person Kirito met. He had that conflict where he didn't want to leave his friends once they realized they were trapped in the game. He didn't want to leave his friends, but he didn't. He knew that his best bet for survival would have been going with Kirito. So I think there's always been that sort of like he feels bad in that regards, and maybe feels like some of what happened with Kirito was a direct result of the fact that he did not go with him at that time. So like I feel there's a relationship there for sure. The relationship with the tamer and the blacksmith I think are a little more ambiguous. Like they each had their own episodes in the original series, but I mean they've only kind of been like a party member almost throughout the rest of it. There's never been like a huge amount of interaction, and a lot of times when their characters come up, I have to like one of those situations like, oh yeah, those two, yeah, okay.
They're more like Kirito's friends.
Yeah.
Than like the group's friends.
Shion, I almost want to say is the same way. The only way she's different in that regards is because Gun Gale was so focused on her story that it's hard to not say that she is at least somewhat of a focal point as well.
Yeah.
And she does make that appearance like she did in the very beginning of this second part of the series, where like if it wasn't for her, Asuna would have died where she did.
Yeah.
Like her appearing where she did and doing what she did is what happened. Now, and I can't necessarily say his sister, I think, has had a good progression as well, because even though she was in that world and even though the orcs were the bad guys, she still wanted to protect the orc throughout all that. And so I think some of Kirito's aspirations and some of his feelings in regards to the fact that even though they're not quote unquote real, they are essentially real in their own way, has also rubbed off on her in that regards. Honestly, that's all I can honestly think about as far as most of them go.
Okay. So yeah, I would say the bartender, the tamer, and the blacksmith would probably have a mention of their like progression.
Mm-hmm.
And because Klein Klein kind of has a relationship with Asuna. He doesn't really have one with Shion, really.
Mm-hmm. I know.
And doesn't at all have one with his sister, I don't think.
No.
Shion kind of has a relationship with Asuna, and maybe a little bit with the sister, and then so I feel like all of them are like they're like the primary members out of the group, and they would be the ones who may have something related to the field, or they may have go to the same college or something like that.
Just thinking about what you were saying, I will say, just as a note, I'm a little disappointed in the fact, like, okay, throughout that entire thing, Kirito kept seeing, what's his name? Shoot. His friend throughout that entire thing. Eugene or Euclid or his
Eugene.
Yeah. He kept seeing his friend throughout that entire thing, and I get that. That was a big part of his life. He died, and he was definitely one of those like Alice, who, I mean, they're Fluxlight. They're essentially they're people almost in their own way. But, and I know this was a traumatic experience for Asuna from the previous series. The fact that what's her name, that had been part of the end of that previous series, that died in real life because she was like terminally sick. Like, it was a moment during that part in the series, don't get me wrong, and I enjoyed it for what it was in that regards, because it showcased the fact that, you know, even as gamers, we still have that part of us that, you know, we feel and we respect each other in some certain sense, which I think is what a lot of gaming communities nowadays are missing in a lot of ways. But the fact that she came back up in the moment of Asuna's being kind of semi-defeated, and at least tried to encourage her to push forward and push through. I'm like, it honestly, because of the fact that I think it came out of nowhere in that regards, it honestly took me a moment to even remember where she had come from and why she was important.
Yeah, I was like, who is that?
Yeah.
I was like, I remember her from something.
Yeah. Is it only until I just mentioned her that you even remembered where she came from?
Yeah, because I was like, I remember. It's like you said the girl who was in the hospital and then she ended up dying, and I'm like, that feels like that happened in the show. And then I'm like, yeah, that did happen in the show.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, and she was hooked up to the machine that they ended up getting hooked up to the future versions of. And then I was like, what was she doing in there? And I was like, oh, she was on that island and did the fight thing and gave her the thing. Oh, God, that's what that is. Yeah. So.
But I think that felt shoehorned in to me.
It did, until I realized that she was hooked up to the machine. I'm like, this is the only way I can link it together, is because she was hooked up to the machine that ended up being the future, like the prototype for what Asuna and them are hooked into. I can see why.
It just felt like it's like they felt like they had Kirito having to have his moment with his friend, so they're like, well, we have to have Asuna have her moment with her friend. It's like, really? You didn't have to have that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it almost cheapened Kirito's moment, honestly, to me.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. There is so much I have such a love-hate relationship with this series. There is so much that I enjoy about the series. There's so much I like, and there's so much. They are definitely what I would consider more than likely groundbreaking in a lot of ways when it comes to animes. I think they were the pioneer and the innovation when it came to isekais. They definitely made it to where the impact of dying in an anime felt more realistic than what we have previously been led to believe or felt in regards to a lot of that. And seeing the progression of the characters over the course of this entire series, especially Kirito in his whole way, you know, he went from a kid interested in high-tech gear and equipment and more in like futuristic stuff, to now as we were talking, he could be the next innovator in artificial intelligence. And if they did a time skip for 5 years, we totally believe that.
Yeah.
Like they've built up his character that much to where I'm like, you could. How many characters do you think you could even say that you could think of that for? Like that sort of progression where they're in their early 20s, but you could see them being pioneers in certain fields that are even beyond our comprehension. And we're like, you know what? I totally believe that. Totally believe that because we've seen him do stuff that we're like, oh, he totally gets that. He totally understands that. He makes it seem more plausible and realistic. But then there's just so many points in the story that they go through that you're just like, why did we do that? Why are you making that a thing? Why are you putting attention on that when you have this so totally awesome thing you're doing over here? But you're like, we know you like that, but let's go over here for a little bit. No, I don't want to go over here. There's no point in going over here.
They're like, for, I'm trying to figure out like what's the quota. They're like, because one of the things that puts off a lot of people on this show, for a few, like there's two people that I know. One is the whole harem aspect, but then later on they kind of, I guess, get away from building the harem and like start going towards like the bigger picture with like there's a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes as far as like government and all these different like just the whole like what raft, is it called raft? Is the company called raft that he works? I feel like raft is a sillier name.
No, I don't think so.
Wrath. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So like basically the origins of Wrath were people inside of like people working with Kaya by Ishi. I don't know his name. And then what he left off and what the original Ironclad tried like turned into, and then the artificial intelligence, like the whole progression of that. Once they got away from like you're in a new world, learning things about the game, building a little bit of a harem, and then the behind the scenes stuff started. That progressed basically up until now, and every now and then it seems like it always happens in part 2. There's Sword Art Online, which is the Ironclad, and then there's the ALO part. And in ALO, they're like, we have a tentacle quota that we need to fill. And then they filled that. And then they went away and did Alicization. And then it's like Alicization part 2. And they're like, oh yeah, we still got that tentacle quota that we got to fill. And then they filled that. And then they went back to the rest of the story. And I'm like, just like how you said, there are certain things we're like, why are we doing this? And it's like, didn't y'all know people hated it in ALO? And they're like, no, but we got the quota that we have to fill. And it's like, and the person that was doing that, she was a cool villain. And it's like, she came back and was just nonsense. I'm like, she became like the cliche villain who's like been resurrected. And then gets killed again right away, like Frieza. Like, yeah. I'm like, what was that?
Yeah. I don't know. Like I said, I have a love-hate relationship with this series. I see the potential. I wish they would continue going in that direction, but it's obviously not my call from a directive standpoint and from a storyline standpoint. But I told Spaz, when the new season drops, just because I've been so invested in the series as a whole, I will at least give it 2 to 3 episodes from the new season. And if they just completely go off the freaking rails, or they're not explaining as to the reasoning behind why we did such a time jump into the underworld, I might just be done with them. I honestly might. Even with how invested I am in the series, and even with how much I've done with it, it became so aggravating to see something like that happen when all I wanted was them to just continue along the same path that they'd already been doing. And now they're trying to add in this other element of, oh, yeah, remember the underworld that you knew about? Well, it's completely changed, and now we're in space and riding dragon spaceships and da 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 da. And I'm like,
Yeah, because it's like they were gonna like even during the press conference, they're like, it takes a long time to develop these things. You can't mass produce this. And then they go back in and they're like, what are we gonna do with this stuff? You can't make one of them from all of this. Like,
yeah,
they're gonna come into the real world and be like, oh, what is this? The Stone Age? Like,
yeah.
it's yeah.
So I don't know. It's like, what did you guys all of a sudden decide that you couldn't? There's no other idea that you could have to going forward, and you're like, you had to do the. Oh my God, we made a mistake. Go back, go back, go back, go back. It's like, wait, what? No, follow through. You had an idea. Let's go with it. Let's continue on with it.
Did this show fall into that trope where it's like, we can't think of anything else, so let's go to space?
You know what? It almost seems like it. It really does. It really, really does. And if they did that, I'm gonna be so mad.
Because um, what's that show that I always mention? I can't remember the name of it. Doggy Style Robots. Um, what is the name of that show?
Anyways, yes.
I think I googled that one. I googled that and it shows up. There's an F something, but yeah. At the end of that show, they're like, let's go to space. There's aliens.
Oh, Darling in the Franks.
Yeah, Darling in the Franks. Yes.
I don't know why they happen to go into. Yeah, all right.
But yeah, at the end of that show, they're like, let's go to space. And I'm like, what's happening? Yeah, Sword Art did that too. And it's like, you know what? I'll allow a mess up. Like,
What is it? I'm gonna give them a couple episodes in whatever season, because obviously, according to their end title card sequence, they are planning on continuing and whatnot. I'll give them that. Like I'll give them a few episodes, but if they just go, now we're having a conflict in space, and oh, we have these futuristic monsters that we have to battle and take out, and oh my God, the fate of this universe rests in your hands, Kito. I'm like, he's Jesus. He's gonna fucking figure it out.
yeah. So I would love for them to continue the like AI thing because it always seems like Sword Art is like one step in the future compared to us. And it's like with the original one, it's VR. VR gaming was not a thing back then, or it was barely a thing, and like it's starting to become more of a thing. But it was a thing in Sword Art. Artificial intelligence. It's the very roots of it and the seeds of it are starting now. And in Sword Art, it was like a developed thing. In however long, when Sword Art comes out, I'm like, are they gonna do, because basically they're doing the same pattern, because it's like it was Sword Art, then it was Gun Gale. And Gun Gale was, we're staying around the same time period, except we're doing a different genre.
Mm-hmm.
And then Alicization came out. And I'm like, are they gonna do another one where they're like in the same time period, except we're doing a space sim now? And then when technology is advanced far enough in the next 5 to 10 years, they're going to come out with one, and basically that world is going to be based on something that's a little bit more advanced than what we have now.
I don't know if that's what the direction they're going in. I don't necessarily know if I like that idea. I don't necessarily know if that's going to be a really good way of going about it because that just seems kind of like a cop out to me.
I haven't seen all of Gun yet. Like all of the oh no, I eventually ended up watching it, but I completely skipped Gun Gale. I was like, I'm out. And then I came back when it like, okay, y'all are back on track. So I don't know, maybe it'd be the same thing.
I don't know. I feel like we had a path, we knew the path, we had drawn out this giant map with detailed representation of each tree, leaf, blade of grass, speck of dirt that we had along this path. And now we're just like, and now we go this way. We don't have the path chart. I don't care. We're going off the trail.
We got off-road tires. Let's do it.
Let's do it. People will watch it. I'm like, you're gonna lose your audience. You're gonna lose the people who wanted this to, go down this way. And I don't care. I can do what I want.
We did it before. We'll do it again.
We'll do it again. So, either way, it's more of just an annoyance than anything else. Like I said, once we started going into Keto Jesus, I'm just like, okay.
Yeah, they have to pull the scale back. Like as soon as they brought in a new idea, they're like, and it's at the scale of the last fight. I'm like, calm down. I don't even know what's happening yet. What is that monster? Where did it come from? Why are they still the same age? I got too many. Y'all got to slow down and answer all these questions first, and then I can probably be amped up like y'all are. But y'all need to calm down first. So.
Yeah. I agree.
But,
I agree.
Oh, wrong button. There we go. So that is the shows that we finished this season, or that we've gotten through so far. Yeah. The next episode we'll be talking about all new show. Well, mostly new shows.
Yeah, mostly since Higarashi's a thing now.
Yeah, we'll be back on the 25th. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this new season. Hopefully, I have more time. Oh, I will definitely have time to like watch one episode of everything. Mm-hmm. So I'll go ahead and sample the next season. I'm ready. But yeah. Did you watch any more of God of High School? I know that's like the super hype show this season, and I just didn't get around to it.
No, I watched up to episode 4, I think.
Yeah, I wanted to get to that one. That would be my third show. I looked at the list. I'm like, okay, these 3, and then I got through 1. I'm like, guess I'll.
No, I think God of High School and ReZero were 2 that I wanted to catch back up on, but I just didn't have an opportunity to. So.
Can't wait for my ReZero. Oh, it's gonna be so good. I can't wait till you get caught up, kid. I know how you feel now. But yeah. That is it for today's stream. As always, it's DK and Shade, TacoYaki Anime. And thank y'all for watching. Thanks for hanging out in chat. Thanks for supporting the channel any way that you do. And we will see y'all on the 25th. Bye. Bye.